Thanks, Marta. So there are two websites that look very similar. The only difference is here these letters at the end. One is for the junior reviewers and the other one is for the senior reviewers. And after the junior reviewer and the senior reviewer apply to the program, I will show that in a moment. Some of us will go through the applications and we'll check whether the applications are complete, and we approve the applications. Then the idea is that for the senior reviewer to find junior reviewers to mentor, and the senior and the junior reviewers work together. This happens outside of the system. And then the senior reviewer evaluates and provides feedback for junior reviewers. This is the main screen of the system. Initially, I will just show screenshots, then I will go live to the system. So the application, the application happens when you don't have an account. You need to click here on create account or reset password, and you will be given instructions on to provide your username. Then you will be sent an email where you can you will have a link where you can provide your password, and once you are there, then you will be able to see this screen. You can create an application. In this case, it's a junior reviewer that already participated in the program, but here is for the 2022 cycle. You can click on create your application, where you will provide contact information, your current status, some information about IEEE RAS, information about published papers, and up to 4, it's actually 5 research keywords, a reference, somebody who can talk a bit about you and probably your advisor if you are a PhD student, and a copy of your CV. So this is actually what you will see when you click on create application. You will provide your general information over here, and it's a form. You just need to move through the form. I will show you the form in a second, and where you will be able to provide your current status, whether you are a PhD student or a master's student or an undergraduate student or even a postdoctoral researcher, your Paper Plaza PIN number. So as Marta mentioned before, this system is outside Paper Plaza, and this is just for us to know that you have participated in the in IEEE RAS, maybe as an author or for a paper. Then you can provide information about a paper that you have already published. This is not a required, both like the Paper Plaza PIN number and the published paper information is not required. Whatever has this star over here is a required field. The other fields are desired. Here you can provide up to 5 keywords. You will be able to type your keywords and find those relevant keywords from IEEE RAS conferences. And this is going to make it easier for senior reviewers to find you when they are trying to find someone to work with. So this is, I want to point out, somebody asked a question in the chat, how different this is from delegating a review. The main difference is that this is an ecosystem to work with junior reviewers that are interested in learning. If you are already working with somebody in your lab, if you are a senior reviewer that is working with somebody in your lab, it's easier for you to delegate your review to one of your students. But if you want to help people who want to participate as reviewers and they want mentors for reviewing, then you will be able to find them because they will provide their research keywords, and you will be able to find those that match your expertise within a single system. You can still delegate the review in Paper Plaza, but here is more a way to connect people. Then the junior reviewer is going to provide their CV so that the senior reviewers that are searching for junior reviewers can look at them if they want to. And that's a junior reviewer application. So now this is for the senior reviewers. It's a very similar process. Once you have an account in the system, you will be able to see this screen. You can create your application. That means you want to participate in this cycle, but you will need to provide less information. Pretty much it's your contact information, IEEE RAS information, and your CV. And the same, this is the application, the screenshot for the application for the senior reviewer. Here, all these fields are required in this case. We really want to find you in Paper Plaza. You should already have an account there. And once a senior reviewer and a junior reviewer have been approved, whenever you log into the system, you will see that your status is shown as approved. You can change your status to inactive if you don't want to participate for a while, and that way your information, this is more important even for junior reviewers. Junior reviewers are not going to be shown if they don't want to participate for a while in the system. But if not, you can change your information if you want to. So the idea is that the approved senior reviewers see the approved junior reviewer applications, search for them based on their research interests, and provide evaluations of the junior reviewers. Some of this evaluation is meant only for the program administrator, for like the joint reviewer program staff and volunteers. And some of it is shared with the junior reviewer so they can improve their work as a reviewer. The review process is completely outside the system. The senior reviewer, once they found a junior reviewer, they can email that junior reviewer to see if they are interested in reviewing that paper. And if they agree, they can work together in the review. The junior reviewer sends to the review to the senior reviewer through email. Now we have in Paper Plaza the delegation feature. You can also do that. But at the end, the junior reviewer completes the review. The senior reviewer is still in charge of the review. And then after the review happened, then they can come back to the system to provide feedback to the junior reviewer. So this reviewer finds junior reviewers. They will see this once they log into the system. They will see there are instructions in order to get to this screen on how to find the junior reviewer database. But once they are here, they click here on the application monitor and they will get a screen like this, where they can search for junior reviewers, for example, based on the research interests. They can start typing research interests and this list is going to be filtered down. They can check whether they are PhD students or not. And once they click on search, they will get a list of junior reviewers. And in each of these records, I am not showing the name of this specific junior reviewer, but there is these buttons where they can provide feedback to the junior reviewers, or they can provide a confidential evaluation on the review. Here they can see their applications and their CVs, all the information that the junior reviewers provided if they want to decide whether they want to work with that particular junior reviewer. Then after the junior reviewer and the senior reviewer work together to put together a review, then the senior reviewer can provide feedback for that the junior reviewer can see. They need to create their feedback and edit it. And when they edit the feedback, they will get this screen when they can provide some ratings and some feedback comments. And this is for the confidential reviews. This was with the other button, which was review. They create the review and they can edit the review, and then they can just provide some descriptive feedback that is going to be visible only for the joint reviewer program managers. And that's all. Okay, so well, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I will now open the website. I will stop sharing. Well, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So this is the website. I'm going to just log in with a demo account, and so this is the senior reviewer interface, this is what I showed you before about the interface to type different. You can navigate in the keywords, or you can type something that is that you're interested in, and then search for those junior reviewers. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer. Okay, I'm putting the links to the system in the chat. The one I put is the one for the junior reviewers, and I'm going to put the one for senior reviewers. If you want to open an account, you can start doing so already.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I guess we can answer a couple of questions. You can write your question directly in the chat. We can try to answer a couple of questions, but then of course we cannot spend too much time, or we lose the time of the event. So if you have any question in general, you can write to me, to Marco, to Paolo, and we will try to answer, I mean, whenever we can. So I see, okay, someone is asking, what are the requirements to be a senior reviewer? Marco, you want to ask me? You want to answer?
So it's just being so this is a very general. What we would like is for senior reviewers to be already to have authored papers, to already be in general cases like have a PhD, and I don't think we have any other requirement.
Yeah, in general, I guess, I mean, you need to prove that you have experience with reviewing. So, of course, you have a PhD or you are a professor, we expect you to have a lot of experience with reviewing. Otherwise, if you maybe are a PhD student, but you already have many experience, you can try to give us evidence about your experience as a reviewer. So, I guess these are the requirements. Then there is Vijan that is asking, I tried the application process yesterday. It mentioned reference person as a senior reviewer. Does that mean I have to find a senior reviewer outside the website already and then apply here? So I guess that we can summarize in, is the advisor, I mean, is the reference need to be a senior reviewer or someone in general?
No, it doesn't need to be a senior reviewer that is in the system. It just needs to be somebody who has already had experience in reviewing papers, and it could be your advisor. But they should be willing to provide an evaluation for you, because they will get an email where they will need to provide some reference for you, like a written reference for you.
Okay, great. Then Mattia is asking, could you give more details about the acknowledgement that the young reviewer received after reviewing some papers?
So this is something we've discussed in the past, and I think this year there's been some discussion on whether we should. I mean, we don't really have yet any formal recognition, but we definitely want to recognize the work of junior reviewers. That's why we have this review process and feedback forms. But I think this is something we're still discussing.
Yeah, let's say it is a work in progress, but we will give you more details soon, I would say. Okay, then Zoe is asking how to sign up for the regular review process. I guess it's something actually we may respond in the next presentation. So, are the papers in the process published? Okay, yeah, I guess that the next question will find an answer in the next part of the event. So I would go on with the presentations. So it's again my turn. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this third part of the event will be about the review process. So I hope to answer some of your questions already with this presentation. So let's talk first of all about the Robotics and Automation Society production. So the Robotics and Automation Society include both conference and journal. But let's start with conference. So the IEEE RAS organize or co-organize about 11 fully sponsored conferences, 19 financially co-sponsored conferences, and 48 technically co-sponsored conferences and workshops. But the three major RAS conferences are, as you may know, ICRA, that is the International Conference on Robotics and Automation, CASE, that is the International Conference on Automation, Science and Engineering, and IROS, the International Conference on Intelligent Robots and Systems. On the other hand, the RAS publication, the RAS journals are about 4 fully sponsored publications, 8 financially co-sponsored publications, and 11 technically co-sponsored publications. Then the 4 RAS fully sponsored publications are Robotics and Automation Letter, Robotics and Automation Magazine, and Transactional Automation, Science and Engineering, and Transaction on Robotics. So these are, let's say, the main one within RAS. Between conference and journal, we have slightly different review process that are actually the topic of this presentation. But first of all, I would like to spend some words to talk about why reviewing. I mean, why it's important to review. First of all, for the research community. So reviewing a paper is a kind of quality control, because we need to answer some question when there is a new paper that need to be published. We need to answer some questions. So is it worth to publish this paper or not? Will anybody read it and actually understand it so it's clear, it's well written, and so on? Does it address an important question or problem? So does it worth actually to answer this question or problem? Does it make any great, major, good, or minor contribution with respect to the state of the art? And did anybody do it before? So this is the reason why we review the paper, because whenever a new paper is submitted, we need to answer to this question. Then the second reason is to help the authors, because while reviewing a paper, we give some constructive suggestions. We tell them how their work can be improved. And actually, if the paper is accepted, if they need to revise it and maybe change many things or minor things in order to make it approved, or maybe rejected because it's not ready for publication. Finally, reviewing a paper is for yourself, because actually while reviewing a paper, you can learn more about the work of other researchers, of course, so more about what the other people are doing. If they're doing something similar to you, you may be interested in contact them and talk with them, or even collaborating with them. But also to learn how to criticize your work, how to better present your work, because, I mean, whenever you see someone else's error, but even someone else's job, someone else, if they did a good job, you can actually learn a lot for your own job, for improve your own job. And finally, to learn how the review process works, because whenever you are involved in a review process, you actually get more insight about actually even your work will be reviewed. So these are some reasons, I mean, the reason we found to review a paper, and this is why we are here today. Then let's go now in the details of the review process. First of all, with RAS conferences. So you may think about ICRA, IROS case, and this is a general, the general review process for all these conferences. First of all, when we have a conference, there is a call for paper. So this call for paper is basically a list of topics that are the topics that may be included in the paper that you want to submit. Then you need to respect a certain paper format, that is usually the IEEE one, and a certain number of pages, that is slightly different depending on the conference. So for ICRA, we usually have 6 plus n, where n is the pages for the references. While for IROS case, we have 6 pages plus 2 if you pay an extra charge. Conference always have a deadline. So this call for paper will tell you, okay, you need to submit the paper within by this day, by this deadline. Usually ICRA is in the middle of September, IROS in the beginning of March, and CASE in the middle of March. Then, after this call for paper, the author so actually write papers and submit them to the conference before the deadline, of course, via the portal that we already mentioned, that is Paper Plaza. Based on the author's choice of the first keyword, that is basically the keywords, as you know, are the word that actually describe the topic of your paper. And based on the first keyword that you choose, the paper is initially assigned to an editor. In general, there are several editors depending on the conference. So we may have, I think, 7 editors for case, while there are 30 for IROS or something similar. So we have between 7 and 30 editors for a conference that are assigned a corresponding number of group of keywords, and all these editors are supervised by an editor-in-chief. This editor assigned the paper to an associated editor that, of course, try to avoid the conflict of interest. So basically, the paper should then be given to an associated editor that know the authors, so have somehow some relationship with the authors. Then the associate editor finds a number of reviewers for each paper. For conferences, this number of review must be measured than 2, but less than 5, because I mean, we need to have at least 2 review, but more than 5 can be even confusing, or I mean, too many. And of course, the associate editor should reject any substandard review that is too short or too shallow, I mean, not careful enough or non-constructive. Afterwards, the associate editor suggests a review summary report for each paper based on the reviews. Basically, this report summarizes the review, state the opinion of the associate editor about the paper, and not any special circumstances. And this report is actually given to the authors of the paper. The associate editor also recommends a score, which instead is not given to the authors of the paper. And this score can be A, B plus, or B, that is basically that the paper is accepted. D, that means that the paper is rejected. And then there are some score in the middle that are B minus, C, C minus, that basically means that the paper is borderline. But usually it's better to avoid this kind of score because they make it complicated to decide what to do with the paper. Then the editor oversees all the reviews that has been collected by the associate editors and balance the score based on other papers that are maybe on the same topic or have been reviewed in a similar way. Then the conference editorial board, that is include basically the editor-in-chief and the editor and the associate editor, collects the reviews and provide the recommendation on the acceptance of the paper, but just the recommendation, because is actually the program chair of the conference that makes the final decision on acceptance and rejection. So you can imagine how many decisions the program chair need to take in a conference. Finally, the successful author for which the paper was accepted can submit the revised paper to Paper Plaza. Let's go now to journals. The process is kind of similar, but there are some differences. So we will maybe go a bit faster, but I will give more space to the differences. So in a journal, there is no need for a call for paper because you can actually submit a journal whenever you want, except for special issue. Because for special issue, there is a submission deadline as for the conference. But in general, special issue have different rules than the one of the journal. So there are special organizers, are on a particular topic, and they are more selective. Anyway, whenever an author decides to submit a paper to a journal, that is actually, again, something that he can do whenever he or she wants, basically, he can submit it again on Paper Plaza. Then we have, again, an editor-in-chief that makes a first evaluation of the paper, if the paper is okay or need to be rejected directly. Then the editor-in-chief, together with some senior editors, assign a paper to an associate editor as before. And as before, the associate editor, find a number of reviews for each paper. This time, the number of reviewers must be measured than 3, but minor than 6. And again, the associated editor will reject any review that is substandard. As before, there will be a review summary report for each paper based on the reviews and on the opinion of the associate editor and also the score. Then the editorial board that is include the associate editor, the editor, then the editor-in-chief as a first discussion based on the reviews and provide a feedback to the authors. So the feedback will be accept, revise and resubmit, that is the thing that is done in most of the cases, and this revision must, can be minor or major. For example, I mean, it's minor whenever you just need to clarify some points or maybe reorganize a bit the paper and so on, while the revision will be major whenever you need to do more experiment or, for example, include more explanation about your methods or do very big modification on your paper. Finally, there is even the rejection. If the editorial board thinks that your paper is not ready for being published, they will reject it. Anyway, they have this kind of discussion, and then the authors can submit a revised version of the paper and reply to the comments of the reviewers with detailed answer. And then the reviewers will review again the second version of the paper, write new reviews, and a new review summary report will be written. And again, the editorial board will discuss the status of the manuscript. This process is iterative, so basically this question and answer between the reviewers and the authors of the paper can be done several times actually. So after this basically game between the reviewers and authors finish, so basically the reviewers are happy with the authors' answer to their question, to their comments, the editorial board finally make a decision about the acceptance or rejection of the paper, and the successful author can submit the final version of the paper that can be the second, the third, but also the version number 99 can submit it to Paper Plaza. Of course, there are some limitations. For example, for robotics and automation letter, the second recommendation is also the final one. So you may have a second version of the paper, but not a third. The third will be just accepted or rejected directly. Okay, so recently another option has been introduced, so you can have a conference with journal option. So basically, in IEEE's case, Robos Optimanoids by Robert Roman, you can also submit a robotics and automation letter paper. And in IEEE's case, you can even submit a transactional robotics, transactional automation science and engineering, and robotics and automation magazine paper. How does it work? Basically, the authors of these journals are given the possibility to select a conference and present their work that has been submitted to RAL, RAM, or TSAA. They can present these journals to a conference. They just need to select the conference, but this will be open only for a period of time. In general, you can find all the information on the website of the respective journal. Now I wanted to give some time for your question, but since there were already some questions in the registration form that you submit when you register to this event, I already included some of your questions in the presentation. So let's answer to this question now. So someone was asking, what are the average duration for each step of the review process? This really depends on the journal or conference where you submit your paper. For example, Robotics and Automation Letter provide a final decision on a manuscript within 6 months from the submission. And if you go on the page of the Robotics and Automation Letter, there is actually a very specific timeline about what is happening to your paper when you submit it. So in general, you can find this kind of information on the page of the journal or of the conference. Not all the conferences and journal are so detailed as RAL, but in general, some information are provided there. But it really depends on the journal or conference. Then many people ask actually, how can I be a reviewer? Sorry, how can I review paper from ICRA, from IROS? I mean, what is required to being a reviewer? I was actually also discussing with my colleague recently, but I mean, there is not a list of requirements that you need to become a reviewer. Being a reviewer, it's a matter of publication, networking, and reputation. What do I mean? Publication is because whenever you publish a paper in a journal or conference, in general, you are required to give at least 2 or 3, or depending on the conference or journal review, for the same conference or journal. So whenever you publish something somewhere, you are required to do some reviews for the same conference or journal, basically. Then networking, because I mean, if you're a researcher, you are well known, and I mean, for example, on a specific topic, other researcher will ask you to review the paper for maybe they are the associate editor of a journal, and they know people and they want you to do the review for their work. So, I mean, if you know, for example, associate editors of conferences or journal, you can actually be asked of being a reviewer. And then there is reputation, because I mean, if you are well known to be an expert on a topic, of course, you will be required to do the review on a journal or conference on that topic. And I hope that this answer to all these questions here. Then someone asked which are the benefits of doing reviews, and I hope that the slide that I proposed you before can answer to this question. Then someone was mentioning about some issue with the timing, let's say, of some journals that took very long time to give the review to the authors, and maybe you lose a lot of time with a journal, and at the end the paper is rejected. So I mean, this result, as this guy or this girl was saying, in a big career loss. And they are asking, is there any way to get around this? Unfortunately, no, because I mean, somehow no, because all the journal, I mean, many journals actually require a lot of time to process your paper, but it's because they need to ensure the quality of your paper. And whenever you encounter some reviewers that are actually they really want you to improve your paper, or they are really a very strong requirement, sometimes it takes a lot of time. What you can do in general, for example, is maybe to publish your work to a conference. First of all, if you have an idea, you can do a smaller work on a conference, and then you can do the extension of this conference in a journal paper. So maybe you will not lose all that time. For example, the IEEE transactional robotics also publish this thing that is called a vault paper that build on the author's previously published conference work. So you may propose your idea in a conference and then expand it to a journal. But I mean, unfortunately, we need to follow the rules of the journal, even if it takes a long time. I mean, we cannot do much. I don't know if my colleagues want to add something on this. And in general, there are some journals that have some review process that are a bit faster than other journals. So in general, you can select the best journal for your publication. Anyway, now we have some time for some other question, I guess. So I can stop.
I can add just something to this last point.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't have so much expertise with this, but I guess that you can add some.
No, but what you said was correct. I will just add that I mean, it's kind of very simple. I mean, if the review process is late, in general, it is your fault in the sense as a community, because I mean, I would say 99.9% of the cases, the review process becomes late because reviewers are late. That's the reason. So we as editors or as editors always wait for some late reviews, which never arrives, and then the whole process becomes late. So when you will be reviewers, keep in mind of this complaint and be in time. That's the advice that I can give you.
It's all about karma in the end. Okay, let's see if you can answer to some question in the chat. So, how does the iterative process between the reviewer and authors happen? Is this transparent or anonymous? Okay, in general, the reviewer are anonymous. So basically, you submit a paper, it's reviewed, but I mean, you just know that the reviewers are reviewer number 1, reviewer number 2, and reviewer number 3. So you really don't know who are the reviewer, because I mean, actually, this will not affect then your judgment, but they know who the authors are. Sometimes in some journal, at the end of the process, when the paper is published, it's possible to know the names of the reviewers, but it's not, I mean, it's valid only for some journals. From what I know, it's not valid for for everything. And I hope this answered to your question. Then, do junior reviewers require to be experienced in publishing their own papers? I mean, in general, if you are a junior reviewer, you can be even a master student, so maybe you have never published anything. So let's say that as a junior reviewer, you can be really someone that is starting to work in research, I mean, from scratch. So I would say, no, you don't need to have written a paper to be a junior reviewer. But maybe, I mean, that's why maybe you need some suggestion for start reviewing. Okay. I wonder if all the review requests from the associate editor to the senior reviewer will be processed on the young reviewer website, no longer on Paper Plaza. No, maybe there was some confusion about this, but Paper Plaza is something. So it's the website when we upload our paper, we submit them, they are processed and so on. The Young Reviewer Program website is only something that is working in parallel to Paper Plaza. It can be used or not, but Paper Plaza is there and will be used, I mean, whenever the people in RAS decide to change it, basically. Does every young reviewer will get a chance to review in this platform, or is it based on profiles solely? It really depends. I mean, you will have the chance to review something if you are selected, but there is also a chance that you will be never selected. Hopefully this is not the case, but it works in that way. So whenever, what you can do is try to select some keyword that describe you that are broad enough. So as you can be selected from a senior reviewer, or try to choose as many keywords as possible, so we have more chances to be selected, let's say. What's the best way to find the associate editor of my area? Actually, I mean, the associate editor, I mean, you will not choose the associate editor. I mean, the associate editor will be chosen by the editor depending on the keywords of your paper, so you don't need to actually to choose it. So I see that more questions are coming, but we may run out of time. So please send your question to me directly or to one of us, and we will answer, of course. But now I will leave the floor to Paolo for the last part of the event.
Yeah, thanks. So I don't know why, but I see your image frozen on Teams. I don't know if it is my problem or not. Anyway, I will try to share my slides. Does it work?
Yes, I can see your slide.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So yeah, I tried my best to prepare this presentation about guidelines and how to review a paper, and actually it's been not that easy, I would say, because there are many points to consider and time is limited. So yeah, I mean, I tried to condense the main points. And so first of all, here some sources from very nice sources of, for example, a paper from 2010 from Seth Hutchinson that explains how the review process works, and from the journal point of view, but it gives many tips also, I would say, on how to write a review. And then other papers and also blogs or posts from famous people or people very active in science who share their thoughts about how one should review papers. So I really encourage you to look at these sources if you want to know more. So I just go back to one slide from Marta. So why reviewing? So she already explained it very well. I mean, first of all, it is a necessary service to the community. Without reviewing, we cannot do science because it's quality control. So what's is a paper good or not? So it is about fact checking, falsifiability, and so forth. So it is a service to the community that we have to do as a community for advancing science. It is for helping authors, of course, with constructive criticisms, and also for yourself as a reviewer, because you can learn. It's a way of learning about what other people are doing, and also it's a way of learning how, I mean, when you criticize in a constructive way, of course, the work of others, I mean, you also learn how your work could be criticized, and then you learn how to better present your work. And as I said, I mean, it's also for the society at large. I mean, if you consider that you're working in science and technology and you want to bring a contribution to the society, this is a way of also increasing the credibility and of the scientific establishment, I would say. So the system is not perfect, of course, but I mean, it's better than many other alternatives, I would say. And anyway, the system depends for the most part on reviewers. So it is your chance to, if you think that something, I mean, it's not working well, to increase help in making it better. So a small flow chart of how the review works. So in general, you are invited to review by someone. Then you should consider several points. I mean, do you have the appropriate expertise for reviewing the paper? Yes, no. I will come back on this point at the end of my presentation. But of course, I mean, if the paper is completely out of the scope of your expertise, you cannot review it. Then, do you have enough time? This is also an important point, because I mean, reviewing takes time, especially when for young people, when you don't have a lot of experience. And if you accept to review, you have to think that you will need time to do it, and time can mean also 1 or 2 days of work. Then, do you have a conflict of interest with the authors? I mean, conflict of interest can be defined in many ways, but every journal and conference has a policy. But in general, I mean, of course, if you are a close friend, collaborator, or student or supervisor of one of the authors, then yeah, you have a conflict of interest, and then you shouldn't review the paper. Then in those cases, you should decline quickly. Okay, this is an important point. When you accept the review invitation, so take 1 or 2 days to decide what to do, but then take an action, a decision quickly, because the more you wait, the more the process is delayed. You decline quickly, and then you may suggest other names that you think could be good names to review the paper. Otherwise, you accept quickly again. Okay, so that's the facilitator will know that you will review, and then it doesn't have to look for other people. Then you may have a first read of the paper, just to see if the paper has enough significance, contribution, technical quality. So sometimes when you get paper that at first glance we get a feeling this paper will never make it. Of course, this is easy when you are experienced. When you are very young, it's harder to do. But I mean, with experience, you learn to see those papers that have no chances. And then in those cases, I mean, you may consider to propose to the facilitator an editorial reject. In general, I mean, I think this is best for a reviewer to do it by email, by contacting the editor or editor directly, saying, look, I think this paper is too weak or whatever, so maybe we shouldn't. We should just reject it editorially, and then the editor will see what to do. Otherwise, I mean, if you think that the paper can have a contribution, of course, you need to have a thorough read of the paper, and then write the peer review in time. So I stress this point, in time, because as I said before, I would say 90-something% of the times the process is delayed because of delayed reviews. So reviewers who accepted and never delivered delay the process, then the editors have to wait, they wait, they write, they wait, then the reviewer never replies, so they have to start looking for another reviewer who will need time, and this is how you get to 5, 6, 7 months of decision time. All right, so what could be a template for a review? So first of all, it's a good practice, I would say, to start with a brief summary of the paper, just to, like if you were to write an abstract of the paper you're reviewing yourself, without copying, of course, the abstract of the paper. I mean, this is good because it shows that, to the author, it shows that you understood what they were doing, or that you didn't understand, which is also a piece of information, because if you didn't understand, this means that the authors didn't explain it well, in general. So this is a good practice, and also for you, because when you write it, you will see that in general, for writing this kind of abstract of the paper, you have to do an effort, and you will also understand something better about the paper. Then you get the main body of the review, where of course you summarize. You summarize your opinion, you say what you liked, what you didn't like, and so forth. Now, the important point here that sometimes happens is that in this text, you don't have to include your publication recommendation. You don't have to say if the paper should be accepted or rejected. That's not up to you to decide. You have to give your comments, but don't say, and then this paper, I don't know, should be accepted, or and this paper should be rejected, because the final decision is taken by the editorial board. So I just have an example from today. So today, a colleague of mine received this review, okay? and you see in this review, the reviewer said everything looks good. So in the current form, I can suggest the acceptance to the editor. That's not good. You don't have to write this in the text. This decision needs to be taken by the editorial board. Yeah. Okay, and then some guidelines for the review. You should comment about what is the contribution of the paper, whether the authors explain the significance of the paper, whether the paper is clearly written and organized, if the introduction explains well what is the problem, if the references are relevant and complete, if the paper is technically sound or not, if it is too long or not, and so forth. All right, so now some suggestions. So I try to put together. So I mean, I've been in this business since a long time now. I'm not that young anymore. I served as editor for IGRA and TRO for a long time. Now I'm senior editor for TRO, so I've seen a lot of reviews. So in my career, and yeah, I try to put together what I feel are the best suggestions as a reviewer after this experience that I got. So. First of all, when you review a paper, you should review the whole paper, not just parts of it. So classical example, a reviewer, focuses on the literature review. So for some reasons, he or she believes that, the papers that they are citing are not, the list is not complete, it's wrong, something is missing, or they are citing papers in a wrong way. And that's basically the review. So they criticize this a lot. And the reviewer doesn't review the rest of the paper, or doesn't put enough emphasis on the rest of the paper. So this in general leads to problems. Why? Because the authors will read the review and imagine that the paper is not rejected, but it is, it gets a chance of being revised. Then the authors will believe that they just need to improve the literature review because this was the main point criticized by the reviewer. But in general, this is not the main point. It is just one of the points. So the authors will improve the references and positioning with respect to the state of the art. They will send the paper back to the reviewer. They will not be happy. But now, it's the authors, I would say, would have a good reason to complain if the reviewer is still not happy, because they can say, why you didn't complain in the first round? Okay, so remember to review the whole paper, not just one part. So reviewers should be anonymous, must be anonymous. So you don't have to identify yourself. Now, of course, almost no one writes his own name in the review. I never seen it. But I've seen many times, let's say, people who, start telling the authors, you forgot to reference this and that paper. And this and that paper are all papers from the reviewer or from the group of the reviewer. So, and this, of course, identifies the reviewer. It's, yeah. So, this is, of course, it's human to, to have the, you get a paper on your topic, you worked a lot on this topic, and you see that the authors didn't cite your papers, and then, your ego is touched, because how come that the authors didn't know your work, and you want to tell them to cite all your wonderful papers. Now, you should resist the urge to do this. You can do it to a certain extent, but not just, you cannot just list your own papers. You have to remain balanced in this list if you want to list additional works or related works that haven't been discussed in the paper. You can cite your 1 or 2 papers from you, but together with papers from other groups, not just your papers. So that's, I think it's quite understandable. So the reviews should be respectful. So it doesn't happen often, but it happens that reviewers, are harsh, unrespectful, even sarcastic, saying that the paper sucks. That the authors didn't understand anything in the topic and whatever. So that's also bad practice. You have to imagine that, first of all, you're talking to your peers, to your colleagues, and in general, very often, I would say, these colleagues or part of the authors are students or very young researchers. And when they get this kind of feedback, this can be very, very hard for them. For someone with a lot of experience, they may not care, but a young student can get touched a lot, I would say, by a very harsh review. So there is no reason to do it. You can always write your comments in a respectful way. So, a very simple rule of thumb is, would you be happy to receive your review if you were one of the authors? So consider this when you write your review and see if you want to revise your text. And also, even if it's, you may think that you focus mainly on the remarks, on the criticism, but you should also try to highlight the positive points of your work, or to encourage the authors to go along what could be a promising direction. So that's always good, especially again if some of the authors are students or young researchers who need this kind of, the positive feedback from the community. So another point which happens sometimes in the reviews, when you write a comment, you must be specific, concrete, factual. Okay? So examples. You write, the idea algorithm has already been considered in many previous works. It is not novel. Point. Yes, but which works? So you cannot just say it has already been done many times without saying by whom, where, in which works. So which works and what part of the algorithm or of the idea has already been considered and why. So be specific. Or the algorithm should be compared against alternatives. Yes, which alternatives? And would the comparison be feasible? I have a slide about it. The next slide is about this point. The paper is too long and should be shortened. Yes, but where and how? It's easy to say the paper is too long. You should also say, and then you could shorten it here, by removing this section, by arranging this part. So otherwise, it is a too generic comment. The technical content is not correct. Yes, where and why? And so and so on. Now, a point about the comparison against the state of the art. So I see this comment many times. And so it's one of the easy comments, I would say. You of course, if you want, you can always say the authors didn't compare their algorithm against something, because it's impossible to compare against all alternatives. So this of course is a valid comment, because a comparison is essential, but you have to keep in mind that this comment must be reasonably feasible. What I mean that first of all, you cannot ask the authors to compare to too many different algorithms and data sets, because otherwise it becomes too complicated. So you cannot ask, you have to compare against 10 different variants or 10 different algorithms, unless, I don't know, very special circumstances. And also another point is that when you say, yes, your algorithm is very nice, but I don't know, Mr. Smith already published a similar algorithm last year in this paper. So you have to compare against him. Yes, that possible to the authors. So otherwise they won't do it. It won't be possible to do this comparison, especially in the time frame given for the revision. Okay? So on a related point, when you talk about this stuff, you can also, on the other end, recommend the authors to make their implementation publicly available. So otherwise they won't do it. It won't be possible to do this comparison, especially in the time frame given for the revision. Okay? So on a related point, when you talk about this stuff, you can also, on the other end, recommend the authors to make their implementation publicly available. So there are tools out there also managed by the IEEE for managing the open source code and data sets. So you can for sure encourage the authors to take a step forward in this direction. So other points. So you shouldn't let your judgment be affected by, for example, the author names, the labs, the affiliations. These in single blind reviews, or in those papers where you know who are the authors. So it happens. It's human that you get a paper in review from a very big lab or from a very big name in the community, and you feel kind of uncomfortable in saying that this paper is bad for some reason. This shouldn't be, of course. This shouldn't matter in your judgment. And also another point that I see, especially in young reviewers, which is again normal because it's just a matter of lack of experience, you shouldn't be scared or be affected by the technical complexity of the paper. So sometimes we get papers which have a highly intimidating mathematical formalism or another complex problem formulation, whatever. So the authors are trying to impress you by having a super complex maths in the paper. Now, this shouldn't scare you. Okay? So in general, this is not a good point of the paper if this is just the only contribution of the paper, at least in our community. So if the technical content is very complicated or intimidating, but at the end of the day you feel that the contribution is small, don't be afraid to say this openly. So also another point which is hard, I completely agree, especially again for young people. You should always try to find the balance between the technical correctness and the significance of the work for the community. So this is explained very well in this survey that I had in my first slide by Seth Hutchinson. So in general, young reviewers they're very good in judging the technical content. They have also the time, I would say, to read the paper in all the details and check all the equations and appreciate the technical content. So they can be very happy about the paper from this side. But of course, since they lack experience, they may fail in assessing the significance of the work, or the novelty of the work, because you need also to be able to judge whether the contribution, besides being correct, if it adds a value to the community. So in your review, you should try, this will come with experience, to balance the 2 points, to give a score if you want to the It can revisit a known problem from a different point of view that brings some new insights that are interesting for the community. It can propose a novel comparison between algorithms, or also an experimental validation to something that has never been experimentally validated before. It can describe a new robotic system, so it can be a system paper that can bring an added value to the community. So the contribution can be in many forms. The contribution doesn't have to be just, I have my new super fanciful theory and this is that's it. Oh, now coming to novelty, I found this blog from Michael Black at the Max Planck Institute in Tübingen, very nice. I suggest you to read it. He shares his thoughts about what is novelty in science. So novelty, of course, it's hard to judge novelty. Everyone may have a different feeling on what is novel and what is not novel. These are just suggestions, so you shouldn't confuse novelty with difficulty. So something that is new or interesting doesn't have to be necessarily difficult or complex. So new ideas can just be simple ideas. It's just that nobody has thought about them before. And many times the best ideas are simple ideas, I would say. So another point is about novelty versus surprise. So maybe you get a paper that proposes a novel idea, and then when you read it, you may find that sure the idea is obvious. I mean, anyone could have thought about it. Yes, that may be true, but the authors were the first ones to think about it, if they were the first ones, and then this has to be recognized. So the fact that an idea can be obvious after you learn it, that is not a reason to reject the fact that the idea is new and that it can have a value for the community. And also about usefulness. So this is a tricky point, but it's very tempting sometimes to say the idea is novel, but I can see how it can be useful for the community. So this is an argument that can be complicated because you never know. Yeah. So I don't have a good suggestion here because, of course, sometimes we may see ideas that I don't know, they don't make sense to us, in the sense they can be technically correct, but for us they don't have any meaning for the community. But when you want to make these arguments, my only suggestion is to think about it well. So are you really sure that this will never be useful for anyone in the next years? So think about it twice or 3 times before making this argument for criticizing the paper. And then if you're really convinced that you can use this argument. Now, just about novelty, be very careful, as also Marta said, when you're reviewing an evolved paper. So some journals, like for example transactional robotics, have what is being known as the evolutionary paradigm, yes, where basically you are writing a journal paper which is an extended version of a previous conference paper. So now, in those cases, you should read very carefully the policy of the journal, because The fact that the paper is an evolved paper, this means that the authors have the right of having parts of the conference paper in the journal paper, even by copy-pasting them, by the same text and same figures. That's allowed. The only point is, in general, for example, for TRO, but I think it is the same for the other journals, is the journal paper, bringing, so is the new material, the new stuff, bringing a significant contribution with respect to what was present in the conference paper? If yes, then they can copy-paste the conference paper, apart from copyright issues. But for example, if the conference paper was from IEEE, so if the conference paper was either from ICRA, IROS, or TAs, then and you are submitting to TRO, for example, then the copyright is still within IEEE, so the authors, it can copy-paste the conference paper. That's no problem at all. The only point is the new part significant enough or not? So I see this many times from reviewers. They say, but this paper is very, very similar. Parts of this paper is very similar to the previous conference paper, so the paper has to be rejected. No, that's not a good argument. So be careful about this point. So a final point. So one of the final point is, when you submit a review, you also have a text box, which is called in general confidential comments to the editor or the associate editor. So these comments will be seen only by the editors. They won't be seen by the authors. So use these comments. They are very helpful. Use this comment to share whatever you want to share about the paper that you don't want to have in the review. You can say whatever you want. These comments will be read by the editor. For example, you could inform the editor about possible plagiarism. I mean, you believe or you may also have evidence about the fact that the authors are copying some other works or are copying too much their own previous work, and you can use the confidential comments to inform the editor about this point, and then they will check. Or you may inform about other papers that should be considered by the authors, but you don't want to list these papers in the review because, for example, these papers are identifying you too much. So you can suggest the editors, you can suggest these works to the editor, and then the editor will see what to do with them. Or another case, for example, I mean, you write a review in a nice, polite way, but at the end of the day, you have a very bad opinion about the paper, but you don't want to be too harsh in the review, so you can use the confidential comments to tell the editor, look, I mean, I wrote the review in a nice way, but anyway, I think that the paper is very weak for this and that reason. Okay? So anyway, I really encourage you to use these comments, these confidential comments. So now, I've seen some of the common questions that Marta has put together in the Google Doc, and I try to give an answer to 4 of them here, and then of course I can answer more after the presentation. So for example, one question that I've seen is, should I be fully confident in the paper topics in order to review it? So the answer is, it depends. Okay? Because for example, you may not be an expert in the deep technical details, but you may be an expert in the field. So I don't know, you get a paper about I don't know, SLAM. So you may not with some new formalism or mathematical tool to attack the problem. So you may not be a specialist in this mathematical formalism, for example, but you may know well the field of SLAM. So in this case, I think it will be fair for you to accept to review the paper, because you may not judge the technical part, but you can judge whether the paper is bringing a contribution to the community or not. And anyway, as I said before, when you're in doubt, use the confidential comments to inform the board. You can always say in the comments, in the confidential comments, look, I wasn't really confident in the technical part, but anyway, I think that the paper, it doesn't bring a good contribution, or I think that the paper is anyway bringing a contribution. So another point that I've seen in the common question is, I mean, the paper is written in a barely understandable English that the authors seem to consider to be the proper English. So what should I do? So this happens. So it happens, and what should you do? So if the paper is written in bad English but still understandable English, you can point this to the authors in the review, and you can you can ask them to make an effort in writing it in a better English. But if the paper is really hardly understandable because it's written in a very poor English, then this is a major flaw, because it is responsible of the authors to explain themselves in a clear and proper way to the community. So if they are not able to do it, that's a flaw for the paper. So you can ask for a revision, for example, by pointing out that either they find a way to improve their English to a normal level, or the paper cannot be accepted. So another point is, how much time should I invest in a review? Again, it depends. It depends on your experience and the type of paper. I would say that when you are young, it may take some time. Okay? So I remember when I was a young student, I could spend even 2 days of work, maybe on one paper, one day to really understand it, another day to understand what I have to write in my review. So it may take some time. This is why when you accept review, remember that reviewing a paper takes time. So if you accept it, you have to book in your, in your agenda the time to review the paper. So this is very important. You have to commit yourself to review the paper by knowing that it will take some time. So should we change the review standards or style based on the journal or the conference? I mean, I would say yes, at least for sure, in the conferences versus journal case, because clearly a journal paper in a major journal in the community, I mean, the bar for a journal paper is higher than the bar for a conference paper. That's clear. So when you review a conference paper, you may have lower standards compared to a journal paper. Anyway, if you have doubts, because at the beginning when you are young, you may not know all these subtleties or nuances between conferences and journals, you can always check the instructions on the journal conference pages or discuss with the editor. That's always possible. This doesn't happen often. Sometimes maybe reviewers, are ashamed, especially if you are young, to write back to the editor, the assistant editor who invited them. But this is a valid option. If you have doubts, write an email to the editor and ask them for clarifications, and you can discuss with them. And other than spending time reviewing a paper for which you didn't set the bar in a proper way. All right, so this concludes my talk, and now I'm happy to take questions. It's just that I don't know why, but I don't see the chat. I have no way of seeing the chat, so I cannot read if there are questions in the chat. So Marta, you should do it for me.
Yeah, maybe I guess I'm the only one can see the chat, so I will read the question for you. No worries. So we have Francesco asking, if the work involves human participants, does it make sense to suggest to increase the subject pool if I think there are too few of them?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, sorry. Basically, he's asking if there are human participants involved, so there are experiments on human subject. If I think there are too few of them, does it make sense to suggest to increase the number?
Absolutely, yes. This is a valid comment in this kind of papers. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So far we don't have many more questions, but okay. I mean, in general, yeah. I guess you give all the explanation already with your presentation. So
let's
answer to all the question before.
It's like this.
Yeah, in general, as I said before, I mean, if you have any question, you can even, we have one. If the editor made a decision and if the authors see that is not correct, can we comment back to the editor?
Well, how I didn't understand well the question. So the question is, the editor makes a decision, but the authors see that the decision is not correct.
Can we comment back on, I mean, I guess that if we, I mean, I didn't get very well the question as well. I mean, if, for example, your paper is rejected and you think...
well, let's say that in general, so...
yeah, I mean, he's giving more details. So can the decision, for example, rejected, be changed? I would say no.
Yes. So yeah, you know, but it is a valid question. So the answer to this question is in almost all the cases no, apart exceptions. So I try to explain myself. So if you submit a paper and the paper is rejected, you may not agree with reviews opinions. For example, they say, I don't know, your contribution is not significant, and they reject it. Of course, for you, it may be the most significant contribution in the world, but that's it. I mean, you can complain, but the paper will not be accepted. So it's part of life. I mean, if the community thinks that your work is not worth, it's like that. You may, of course, you may be unlucky in the sense I don't know, the editor found reviewers who, I don't know, didn't like the paper or didn't understand it, and this is why the paper is rejected. But in those cases, in general, if the reviewers, and if, of course, the reviewers are not acting, you know, if they are acting in a fair way, if the reviewers didn't understand the paper, it is your fault, not the reviewer's fault, because you didn't explain it well. This is really, in most of the cases, it is like this. You didn't explain well what is the, you know, the contribution, why what you are doing is important, how it is positioned with respect to the state of the art, and whatever. So in general, it is your fault, and then the reviewers don't get it, and then they judge it negatively. So the exceptions, I would say, to this rule is that if there is a factual error, but it has to be a factual error. So factual error means, for example, a reviewer, I don't know, says your paper should be rejected because in the equation 12 there is a mistake, and they say what is this mistake, but then the equation 12 is correct. So if you are sure that you know, the equation 12 was correct, and this was the reason for rejecting the paper, then in this case, you can get back to the editor and say, look, I mean, I disagree because the equation 12 or theorem 4 are correct. You explain why, and of course, if this is true, then that's a factual error, and in these cases, the paper can be reconsidered. Or yeah, other cases like this, I would say. So it is, if it is a factual error that you can, you know, you can contest, then yes. Otherwise, if it is a matter of opinions, you can complain. I mean, you can always complain. I receive many complaints, but it almost never works.
Okay, then there is another one. People were just shy. Is it okay to ask people to do a certain experiment, a specific experiment, I guess?
This goes back to the point that I had in my slide. Yes, if it is appropriate and feasible. So you always have to put yourself in the place of the authors. If you ask to do an experiment which is unfeasible, in the sense, I mean, doing the experiment will take 1 year of work, then you cannot ask it because they will never make it. Or if you ask to compare against, you know, the solution provided, which has already been published in paper X, but the authors of paper X didn't release an implementation of this solution, and if the implementation of this algorithm is not trivial, then again, it's also not that fair to ask for a comparison, because what the authors should do, so imagine yourself in place of the authors. You should get paper X, understand what they do, re-implement their methods, which maybe for them took 1 year to implement it. And then you should implement it with the same level of accuracy as of the authors of the method, and then compare it against your method. That's unfeasible. I mean, the authors will never do it. So you can ask it, yes, if it is feasible. That's my only recommendation. So anyway, as always, put yourself in the place of the authors. If you get these comments, would you be able to do it or not?
Okay, thank you, Paolo. We have 2 more questions, and I will say the last, and then we need to finish the event. So yeah. The first one is, can a review propose a different approach or a slight modification of the one shown in the paper?
Well, I don't know, because I mean, if you propose a different approach, I mean, it's very unlikely, I would say, that the authors will say, you're right, so we change completely our approach, because this would mean that their approach is wrong and the paper has to be rejected. So that would be a reject, and the authors will resubmit the paper with your approach. So what you can say is, I suggest another approach in the sense that I would like you to, I don't know, position yourself with respect to my approach. So they may add the discussion about, why their approach is better than yours, or what are the differences, or what are the pros and cons. That's completely feasible. And you should do it if you think that, it's appropriate. Or you propose another approach in the sense that they should compare against your approach if this comparison, again, is feasible, reasonably feasible. But yeah, otherwise, proposing another approach in the sense that the authors should use your approach instead of theirs, that's quite unlikely, I will say.
Okay, great. Let's go to the last question. Unfortunately, we don't have much time left. During a review phase, can the relevance of a reviewer's suggestion be questioned by the editor?
Yes. So the editors, when they collect the reviews, they anyway. So you have to keep in mind that in general, in most cases, when the editors, they invite the reviewers, so they know who they are. They know in general. So this is how it should be. So they know if they are, young, inexperienced students, or if they are very experienced researchers, if they are very active in the field, if they are marginally active in the field. So they will weight your comments based on this knowledge. And it's completely possible and also normal, I would say, that as an editor, I collect 3 or 4 reviews, but then I will decide, what are the comments that are pertinent and what are the comments that can be neglected because they're not pertinent, or yeah. So that's very possible. Don't be I would say, don't be surprised, when you review a paper, in general, a journal paper, so you send your review, and then at some point you get the decision back with the summary from the editor. And then you find that the editor, didn't consider some of your points, or maybe even, went against one of your points. That's normal. It's part of the process. I mean, you suggest several points, other people suggest several points, and someone else higher in the hierarchy will decide what are the important points and the non-important points. So I think it's completely normal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paolo. I'm sorry for the other question, but I think we need to close the event also because we went far longer than what we expect. So I will share my screen for a final slide, I would say. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so some final remarks. I would like to tell you that the event has been recorded and will be available online soon, along with the slide of the presentation. Some people ask about them, so actually yes, the slide of the presentation will be available online. And I will put, I don't know yet, but I mean, a link or directly the material on the event webpage. So on the webpage where you see the information about the event, I will put a link or something to give you the chance to get the material, let's say. Then I would like to tell you that new events will be planned in the future. So if you have any suggestion, let us know. If you want some topics to be covered by us or some new presentation to be done, we are really open to your suggestion. And in general, feel free to contact us. So if you have any question about whatever we have said today or about the review process, papers and so on, really feel free to contact me, Paolo, and Marco to ask about your doubt and question. And in general, I would like you to join the Young Reviewer program. So you can go on the website that is actually linked in the webpage of the event. And please, if you think that it's useful, I think it is, join the program, subscribe, and as a young or a senior reviewer, and join us in this plan, let's say. So finally, I would like to thank you all for the attention, for the participation. I would like to thank Marco, and that is not here. I mean, we miss him somehow. And I would like to thank also Paolo for the presentation and the participation in this event. And again, all of you for being here. So see you in the next event, and I hope you will join the Young Reviewer program.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.